Yes. Our first speaker is Renee Allen. She's here on request only. She came the furthest to speak to us, and so we're really excited to have you here, Renee. Thank you for coming here. So, and you're going to love her voice much better than me because she's got that southern drawl. You're going to just absolutely love it. For you Canadians, that means our South, not your South. Yeah. She's here to speak to us about, she's got a couple talks. This first one is on spray coverage and some of the information about how the different technologies will help. So please welcome Renee for our meeting today. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. So like you said, my name is Renee Allen. I'm what they call the Area Blueberry Agent at the University of Georgia. And I focus just on commercial blueberry production, and I'm also a PhD student. I want to talk to you today about kind of a demonstration that I did looking at some different types of sprayers and the coverage. And I collaborated with Dr. Glenn Rains. He's an ag engineer out of the Department of Entomology at UGA, and Dr. Phil Brandon. He's a small fruits pathologist. So I actually did this back when I first started this position, about 2013, 2014 timeframe. And when I started, there were all these different types of sprayers that the growers were using. Some were grower modified, some of them were commercial products. So they had a wide range of sprayers, but they didn't know kind of what kind of coverage they were getting and which one might be the best type of sprayer. And so there was this growing concern on the coverage and what type of efficacy they may be getting with these types of sprayers. And you can see pictured here, here's kind of a lineup of a field day I hosted with the different types of sprayers. We have air blast, we have electrostatic, we had some cannons, some different types there. And so they wanted to know, okay, well, what kind of coverage are we getting with these different types of sprayers, and is it efficacious against some of these emerging pests we were dealing with? And so one that y'all are well aware of is the spotted wing Drosophila. And at the time, they didn't know very much about its biology at all, but they were starting to suspect that it liked kind of cooler temperatures and was kind of getting up in under the shade of the canopy and the leaves of the blueberry plants. And so they want to make sure that their sprayers were, getting the pesticide to their target pest. And then we also had Exobasidium leaf and fruit spot disease, causes these aesthetic lesions on the fruit. And we didn't know much about the biology of that fungus either. So, but you can see that there's like some hyphal mats that form under the underside of the leaves, and it's kind of has a yeasty stage that gets into the bark and crevices. And so again, are we getting good spray coverage? Very important for these particular pests that we're looking at. And so first I wanted to, just compare the coverage amongst these sprayers and determine what kind of coverage in the blueberry canopy under the operator's current settings. So however they were operating their tractor and settings on the sprayer, that's how we tested it. And so I wanted to assess the droplet size at different locations and orientations within the canopy, and I'll show you that shortly. And considering that type of spray coverage and droplet size data we collected, what does that mean with regard to control of these various pests? And so we use this product called Vision Pink foam marker dye, and we place that into each of the sprayer tanks, and it will stain your equipment. So, small sacrifice for the sake of research, I suppose, but just keep that in mind. Recorded temperature, humidity, wind speed and direction, and then the operator ran the sprayer. And we had these bamboo poles with these metal brackets on it, these L-shaped metal brackets, and attached to them were these ChromaCoat cards that they're not water sensitive. They're not water sensitive. So South Georgia humidity, which you may not be familiar with, but that would not show up on the card, just the droplets emitted from the sprayer. And so I had a card on the front and the back in the vertical orientation, and on the top and the bottom in the horizontal orientation, and at the top, middle, and lower portions of the canopy. And the agricultural engineer, he did the spray card analysis, and so he could use this technology called Droplet scan software and analyze the droplet sizes. And what it'll give you is it'll kind of show you the percent coverage on the cards and give you what's called a VMD, which I would like to explain further here. But it was really nice because the growers in the field at the field day, they could go right up to these cards and kind of see what kind of coverage they're getting. But at the same time, we were able to collect some data and kind of form some conclusions from that. So just wanted to review with the growers, and I'm sure y'all are probably aware of this, but there's different nozzles and droplet size categories that are appropriate for different pests. So with fungicides, you want more of a medium droplet category, producing a finer type mist. And the droplet size, the VMD, what we call VMD, it's the volume median diameter. Basically, 50% of the droplets are a smaller volume and 50% of the droplets are a larger volume than that VMD number. But these different droplet categories have different ranges that correspond to them. So in your little TJET catalog, when you're trying to pick out new nozzles or disc and core sizes, you want to see what kind of droplet category that corresponds to. With insects, you know, your target pest is a bit larger, so you can get away with maybe a coarser nozzle type with a different VMD range. And, you know, likewise with herbicides, you know, larger target pests, so you can even get away with a more coarser droplet category option for your nozzles. So for the field day, and this is just kind of a top view if you're looking down on the blueberry rows, but we used a air blast sprayer and looked at sprayer coverage on that one first. And the poles that I showed you earlier were oriented in the 2 rows to the right of the sprayer and 2 rows to the left. And so this is what some of the cards looked like. If we look at the rows that were beside the sprayer, you see you kind of have some different coverage. And what we're shooting for example, this card here, it says 27%, 27% coverage. What we're looking for is at least 10% coverage on that card. That's what you want to shoot for good sprayer coverage. And so a lot of these do very well. We have 32% here, 12% here, 29%, 13%. Some that are a little lower. So again, that may be because of the nozzle may need replacing or something, but overall, pretty good spray coverage with the air blast sprayer. And if you look at the poles on the next row over, and this is very interesting, and I'm going to re-loop to this in another study we did. The ground speed was whatever the operator used on the tractor. So they may have done 3 miles per hour, 4 miles per hour. So we just did the operator settings just to kind of get a feel for what the growers were doing and what kind of sprayer coverage we would get. And so here you can see you get some coverage on the left-hand side in the direction where the wind was blowing. So we had 5.7 miles per hour wind at this time. But on the right-hand side here, you get virtually no coverage. So we're going to re-loop back to that in a minute with another study. But overall, we found that the air blast sprayer, good coverage at high, medium, and low heights in the plant and in those rows beside the sprayer. But of course, with the wind, and again, we always preach, try not to, do too much spraying with, high wind speeds. But the wind can greatly affect your coverage. So that was something that we could show the growers and get a feel for. Another sprayer we looked at is a large boom type sprayer. We call this a BTS Drop Chopper. And this is very commonly used in row crop production. And with blueberries, growers with larger farms, they're trying to cover more acreage. So we wanted to test out these boom sprayers and see what kind of coverage we were getting with those. And again, just kind of an overview of if you're looking from the top down in the field, the center of the boom went here. And then we had poles also in 2 rows to the right and 1 row to the left. So interestingly, we saw, pretty good coverage in the top part of the canopy here. So you're getting coverage 13%, 13%, 66%. You can notice the 66%, the nozzle was probably, maybe fairly close to the boom there. And then the middle portion, it's okay, 7%. It's getting a little low, 38%. And then in the bottom portion, not very much coverage at all. And kind of a similar trend we saw with these the poles across. So one thing with boom sprayers, again, you want to make sure you're getting good amount of liquid going through each nozzle equally, right? So there could be some discrepancies there. So we found that the coverage was pretty good in the top and the middle portions of the canopy, not so much in the low part. But one thing to keep in mind is kind of the level of your boom, right? So if it's too close to the canopy, you're going to get that smudging effect, which, I mean, who doesn't want 66% coverage? But then again, you really got to let your droplets get out and atomize properly. But then you want it low enough, your boom set low enough to the ground that it's going to get maybe, you know, middle to lower portions of the bush as well. So there's another study that was prompted, again, from the air blast study. We saw that the rows that weren't beside the sprayer were not getting very good coverage. And I found out from the growers, a lot of them were skipping every other row on the coverage on the sprayer. So we wanted to see what kind of coverage we were getting, if any. And we did this testing. You'll notice it's actually in February. There's no foliage on the plants. So you think, hey, you know, if we get good coverage here, let's see. Same kind of thing as far as top, middle, and lower portions of the canopy of the plant, and the different cards at vertical and horizontal orientations from the front and the back, or the top and the bottom. Because again, the leaves, they're all kinds of orientations. You want to make sure you're hitting all of those. And but in this situation, we put it right beside the plant instead of in the plant. We put it right beside the plant, and the tractor, let me just go to this view here. The tractor would come around this way with the air blast sprayer, skip a row, which is, you know, was common practice at the time, may still be a little bit, and come around this way. And so I wanted to look at the spray coverage on these cards in these poles, whether it was beside the tractor or in the row that the tractor and the sprayer did not travel down. And in this case, we actually used 3 miles per hour for the tractor speed. And so in theory, you should have fairly good coverage at that type of speed. And you can see that you do when the sprayer does go by that plant. We have really good spray coverage here: 13%, 50%, 17%, 64, 97%, 70%. You know, so top, middle, and low portions of the canopy. So this air blast sprayer is working very well. And then we look at the row that it did not travel down. And you can see not very much coverage at all, 0.27%. That's virtually nothing. We did have a couple that did okay on one side. And again, that may have been because the wind may have drifted it a little bit. But overall, we're getting well below that 10% threshold that we're trying to get for sprayer coverage. And this is just another visual here. So you can see on the horizontal axis, we have the high, medium, and low portions of the plant canopy that we tested. And on the vertical axis, the average percent coverage. And the threshold is here at the 10% line. You know, that's what we want to get over. And of course, we're getting well over that when the sprayer does travel down that road. When it doesn't travel down that road, very low. And again, very surprising, because this is the season that there's hardly any foliage on the plant. So add foliage to the plant. Imagine what your coverage would be when you don't go down the road. Definitely zero. And this is just another replication where you can see that. So in conclusion, you know, we have a wide variation on the droplet size and coverage amongst the sprayers. The cards closest to the nozzles would have larger droplet sizes, and the wind speed can have a significant effect, especially the more further you are away from the sprayer. High pressure, so, you know, something to keep in mind: the higher the pressure, the smaller the droplet size, the more prone to drift. So that's kind of a balancing act with fungi, right? That's a very small target, so we want a medium droplet size category, but we don't want to get too fine. So when you're looking at your nozzle categories and your disc and core sizes, you want to keep that in mind. And also, alternate row middle spraying tremendously limits spray coverage on rows that the sprayer does not travel down. So I understand the growers, they're under constraints. They have X amount of acreage to coverage. They're trying to get it sprayed in time, but just know that you're really not getting at your target pest there. And so the more rows you can go down, that much more reduction in disease incidence, etc. So it's just very worthwhile to go down each row if you can. And so from there, I wanted to initiate some more research projects, you know, choose a couple of these sprayers and conduct some efficacy studies, and some more testing has been done by other groups at UGA where they looked at drop-down nozzles on the boom sprayers, and that does help with coverage. And I conducted a sprayer calibration workshop the following February, and we looked at, the big thing is that these sprayers all can work for you. But the big thing is you want to make sure that there's not a lot of wear and tear on those nozzles, that you replace your disc and cores, that you use the appropriate pressure, and try to slow the tractor down a little bit. I know I've been to a site before where the grower was going, I think it might have been 5 miles per hour with the tractor. I was like, whoa, I hope he knows how to work that thing. And he had a really bad botrytis problem in his field. So, I mean, there's no point in spraying if you're not going to try to at least slow down a little bit and try to get some decent coverage. But also your nozzle can help you out there too. So maybe you can still go a little faster, but if you have a little bit more opening on your nozzle and get more product out, those sorts of things. So that's all something to consider. And then, of course, the placement of those nozzles. So this time I'd like to take questions. Or... Oh, sorry. What kind of sprayer?
Side boom sprayers.
Like the Canon sprayers? Yeah. Yes, we did test the Canon sprayers. I didn't show that.
Over the road booms.
Oh, the over-the-road boom?
Yes.
Okay, we did test the over-the-road boom. Did you see that with the large arms?
No.
Oh, that monstrosity y'all have over there in the expo room, I actually have not seen one of those before. So no, we did not test that. Now we do have some grower modified sprayers where they get around the bush. So they may have a couple of nozzles going in at this angle, angular to the top portion of the canopy, and then vertical along the sides of the canopy. And based on what I've seen, they do get very good coverage from those. So, but this was a few years ago, so we didn't have that in this type of testing. But yes, those work very well on getting good coverage on the plants. Especially, we use a kind of a smaller version of what you have out there for our younger plantings, and that works very well.
This is kind of more of an observation that I've got older blueberry fields, and so they've got a lot more brush to it, and so I take my wind sprayer up every row. Sometimes in the raspberries, I can do every other row when you're just spraying the sticks, but then you really can't have much wind at that time because it's all open and the air will push against you.
You make a very good point. One thing I didn't mention is pruning. Cane pruning in blueberries is actually a way that you can really help with your sprayer coverage if you're forced to go down every other row. But keep in mind, you know, and I'm not very familiar with raspberries and how many canes they have, but with blueberries we have a lot of canes. So regular cane pruning, that can help. But canes in general, that vortex of wind will kind of whirl around the stem. And so those droplets may not be landing where you would think they would land, and where you would think they would kind of shoot over to the next row that you don't travel down, they actually kind of get stuck in kind of a vortex right around that plant. So that was kind of an interesting observation that we saw. But it may be different for raspberries, you know.
One more observation is with the wind blast sprayer with the fan in the back, is that when you're pushing it out, I find that it circles right around, sucks back into the fan again to run her back out in the bush again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think some growers, they may adjust and not use the fan so much, or they may use it kind of depending on kind of what pest they're targeting or what they're trying to do with it. Mm-hmm. But that's always an option. You don't have to necessarily have your fan running. Any other questions?
No more questions for Renee? Plenty of time. Don't let her off the stage quite yet.
You have any general?
Yeah, we got a question right here.
Questions.
Are those all southern high bush blueberries?
Well, the comparison of the different sprayers we tested on southern high bush blueberries, kind of the smaller stature blueberry, and then the every other row we did that on rabbit eye, which they were of taller stature.
I'm not familiar, but do they all defoliate and drop their leaves?
Yes and no. I guess, I mean, it really depends on the weather conditions. Rabbit eye, typically, yes. Southern high bush, if we have a mild winter, and depending on the variety, sometimes they will keep their leaves longer. And, you know, we do have some concerns with that from a pathology perspective, as, you know, more inoculum in the field and disease sticking around. But yes, in Florida, for example, they have evergreen varieties, and their leaves will stay on about year-round, South Florida.
Jeff, you guys up?
I don't know if you caught it or not, but I did. What's your typical gallons per acre?
Okay, for fungicides and insecticides, extension, we tend to recommend 50 gallons per acre. With insects, it's a little different depending on the insect. For example, gall midge, we sometimes have issues with gall midge early in the season when those bud scales are just opening up, and you really want to get really good coverage. You want that spray to get down in cracks and crevices and nooks and crannies, so to speak. And so then we push for 100 gallons per acre. But I know for the growers, it's kind of, wow, that's a lot of water. But I try to tell them, well, if you can at least shoot for 70 or 80 gallons per acre in that situation, that's still going to be a lot better than just 50. You know, the boom sprayers, they probably don't use quite that much, you know, gallons per acre. But yes, the more water, the better coverage you're going to get.
Renee, do you see any differences when you're using drift control products or surfactants? Does that make a big difference as far as your droplet sizes are concerned?
I mean, I would think that the no drift, so to speak, the drift retardants would help for sure. I mean, they're surfactants, and that can affect the water tension on the droplets. So probably make them a little bigger, heavier versus, you know, without the surfactant, you know, you probably have a little bit more finer, more drift. I mean, that's my guess. Again, this is not as much my area as some other areas.
We like asking you questions on the topic that you don't know about. It's much more fun. Other comments, questions before we let her off the stage?
Any curiosities about Georgia blueberry production?
Yeah, we saw that you're way down in production because of spring frosts.
Yes, we had a major freeze this year. So, and then we had hurricanes hit too. So that probably didn't help the newer, younger plantings. And then I was kind of hoping, well, maybe that helped the farmers up here, but of course, y'all are different production time frames. So
We appreciate the effort anyway.
we try. Yeah.
Last chance. Renee, thank you very much for your
Okay.
time.
Thank you.